Last month, Paul on the Plane had an interview with a person calling himself Zach. Zach claimed to be a professional pilot with almost 30 years of experience, and Zach also claimed that he believed that the Earth was flat. Now, in the course of that conversation, Zach made several claims that make it very questionable whether or not he actually is a professional pilot and has done the things he claims to do. One of the claims he makes, just after maybe the 7-minute mark in the interview, is that when he enters the coordinates for a flight plan from Sydney to New York or Brisbane to New York, the flight plan he would expect on a globe to end up with a flight plan that brings him fairly close to Hawaii, but he's saying that his flight plans bring him over Alaska instead, which makes much more sense on an AE flat Earth map. So we're going to put that claim to the test here. This is ARINC Direct's website. They are a very respected flight planning company. Over here on the map you can see Australia just down here. So Sydney and Brisbane will be in this area. New York will be over here. This is Hawaii. And of course Alaska is up here. Once I put the airport codes in, it's going to immediately draw a line connecting the departure and destination airports, and the line is going to represent the shortest distance between those 2 points. The actual distance is going to show up down here, and once I put the time in, down here it's going to start calculating the most efficient route between those, which is not necessarily going to be along the shortest path because it's going to take into account the winds as well. So we'll try Brisbane, which was one of his claims. Oops. To JFK. And there you see, this is the shortest distance between those 2 airports, and it's very close to Hawaii, nowhere near Alaska. Down here in the routing box, it's trying to calculate the optimized route for that city pair at that time. And here we go. So now the route you see has changed slightly, not very much, but slightly from the shortest path that was shown before. And again, that's because this route is going to take advantage of the best winds between those 2 points. Now, ARINC Direct, they have a companion app that's available on the iPad. And we can transfer the information from the website to the iPad app, and this is the actual flight plan for Brisbane to JFK. And it shows all the waypoints, the times that we expect to get to those waypoints, the fuel that's going to be burned, the distance between waypoints, the directions between waypoints, and we also have a map here that shows the flight plan route that we just saw on the website. Now again, here's Hawaii, here's Alaska. When you use real tools, this route goes nowhere near Alaska. Towards the end of the video, he also mentioned flight planning from Sydney to Los Angeles and claims that that also takes him in his Gulfstream 650 over Alaska. But you can see that this route to New York comes quite close to Los Angeles. So if we were to plan from Brisbane to Los Angeles or from Sydney to Los Angeles, we would end up on a route very similar to the one that's drawn here. Now this is just one app. We also have ForeFlight, which is a very popular app with both recreational pilots and professional pilots. And what I've done here is I have used the magenta line to draw the shortest distance between JFK and Brisbane, and the cyan line with all the triangles is the actual flight plan route that came from ARINC Direct. So you can see that the cyan line is not quite the shortest distance, but it is quite close to the shortest distance, and it's certainly much closer to Hawaii than it is to Alaska. And this route, if you look at it on a ball, makes perfect sense because that looks much closer to a straight line. We can look at the same in another app. This one is called Jeppson's Flight Deck, and this is more common with professional pilots as opposed to recreational pilots. Now, as you can see, the lines of longitude here converge to a single point at the South Pole. Why? Because this app recognizes that the Earth is a globe. The lines of longitude converge to a single point at the North Pole. The route between from Brisbane to New York passes south of Hawaii, nowhere near Alaska. So there you have three different apps that pilots would use to do something like this, and all three of these apps agree that it would make no sense to go anywhere near Alaska on a trip from Australia to Los Angeles or to New York. You can see in this app as well, this route passes very close to Los Angeles. Now to go back here and look at the flight planned route, passes south of the shortest distance route, or the Great Circle route, and that is because, so the Great Circle route is something like this. If we turn on our winds, we'll see that we have some advantageous tailwinds. These black triangles represent 50 knots. The long line next to it represents an additional 10. So this is 60 knots of wind going in this direction. This would be 40 knots of wind going in this direction. The short line is 5 knots, so you have 10, 20, 25 going in this direction. And up here you have actually 10 knots coming in this direction. So if we were to take off from Brisbane going along the shortest path, we would end up running into some light headwinds here rather than taking advantage of 50 or 60 knot tailwinds in this direction before turning north. The other claim he makes at about the 9.5 minute mark is that when he flies from Sydney to Perth in Australia, he estimates that distance to be close to 3,000 kilometers. He makes a point that at altitude, if you're following a curved surface, at altitude you're actually following a longer distance over the surface than the actual distance along the surface connecting those 2 points, which is true. But he estimates that the additional distance is about 900 kilometers between Sydney and Perth if they're 3,000 kilometers apart. He uses some very interesting fuzzy math to figure that out. So let's investigate that claim. Is it really an extra 900 kilometers across a globe if you were flying at altitude between Sydney and Perth? This is the Federal Aviation Administration's website, and we're going to look up the type certificate data sheet for the Gulfstream G6. He claims to be flying a Gulfstream 650, and that's what this is, a G6. So we have the Federal Aviation Administration Gulfstream G6 type certificate data sheet. And this will give us quite a lot of information about the airplane that he is claiming to fly, but the one we're looking for is the maximum operating altitude, 51,000 feet. And just to confirm that we're talking about the same airplane, here we see that the type certificate data sheet calls it a G6, but the common name is the G650. This also covers the G650 extended range version. So 51,000 feet is the maximum altitude that his airplane is authorized to fly. If we convert 51,000 feet to kilometers, we get 15.5 kilometers. And here in GeoGebra, what we've done is drawn a circle that has a radius of 6371 kilometers, which is roughly the radius of the Earth. We've put 2 points along the circumference of that circle. We'll call one Perth, we'll call one Sydney. And we've added another line just above the line connecting Perth and Sydney. So the green line is along the ground, the blue line would be in the air at an altitude of 15.5 kilometers. So this is assuming if he was flying as high as that airplane could possibly fly, he would be covering this blue distance in order to get from Perth to Sydney. So here we show the length of the green arc segment, and in blue here we have the length of the blue arc segment. And if we can move one of these points around, and you can see that both numbers will change and give us the correct calculation. So if we stretch that out again so that the ground distance is close to 3,000 kilometers, we'll see that the difference between the ground distance and the air distance is not even 8 kilometers over a distance of 3,000 kilometers. Now, how Zach came up with 900 kilometers is beyond me, but he was very concerned about the fact that he was not taking into account the difference in distance between flying at altitude and the distance along the ground. Now, 8 kilometer distance difference over a 3,000 kilometer section or leg in an airplane that he says is flying 1,000 kilometers an hour, so we're talking about a 3-hour leg, the difference of 8 kilometers is going to be less than 30 seconds. So it's hardly something that needs to be, it's hardly something that you would need to worry about. So once again, that's another claim that he's made that makes absolutely no sense. Now, one of the things I find very interesting is whenever you see a video that has a flat earth pilot, they seem to have a lot to say, but they never have anything to show. Whereas if you watch a video from, for example, Wolfie 6020, he is always showing you the tools that he uses, he's showing you the cockpit that he works in, he's showing you the charts that he uses, he's showing you the software that he uses, but yet Zach had nothing to show, only dubious claims to make. Thanks for watching.